Okay, so now we've got Jill Terry from BHP. So she's here to talk about how, sorry, I've lost where I am. She'll be talking about some key deliverables from her current role, such as some initiatives to enable industry professionals to improve their technical capability, both within BHP and for the industry more broadly, as well as in the education sector. Thank you so much, Jill.
Hey, thank you. Can you hear me?
I can.
Good, excellent. All right, well, thanks everyone for logging in today, and thanks Jess for organising this. It's actually a really great idea. So, as you said, my topic's technical capability, and this is an area that I'm really passionate about, and I've been really fortunate to have BHP support to implement some of the initiatives that will hopefully make a real difference, not just to BHP, but also, as you said, to the broader resources industry. I started this role back in October of last year, although, as I'll explain, the journey probably started a couple of years before that. The focus is on geoscience and resource engineering, and I'm very aware that resource engineering seems to be a BHP term. So just to make people clear about what that is, when we talk about resource engineers, we're talking about mining engineers, metallurgists, geotechnical engineers, tailings engineers, hydrologists, surveyors, those sort of people who really do the modifying factors effectively for to create reserves and then to extract whatever it is that we're interested in mining. So Jeff talked about the three areas of focus. I guess that first area is absolutely around people who are already in the industry. The second area is really assisting tertiary institutions to better align their curricula with both our current and also our anticipated future industry requirements. When I talk future, because the world is changing so quickly, I'm really thinking 5 years from now. I'm actually not prepared to guess what it's going to be like past that. We also absolutely want to increase enrolment in mining-related degrees, and I'll talk more about that. And then the last piece, so it's very, very lucky and fortuitous that Susie's on the call today. The last piece is really looking at initiatives that will expose both primary and secondary school students to the breadth of career opportunities within the mining industry, and absolutely with a focus on STEM. I have some overarching criteria that are really guiding me in terms of what I work on and what I don't work on. This is an absolute minefield, and you could be here for the next 100 years, and you could touch many spaces. But really, what I'm focusing on is the things that have the potential to make a material difference, both now and into that near-term future. But they also must be sustainable. So there is no point in putting an initiative in place only to find that as soon as you take your foot off the pedal, personally, it falls over. These have got to be things that the industry or the broader community can take on board and keep running with. So equally importantly, we need to have success measures and we need to have performance metrics. These are really important so that we understand what do we want to get out of an initiative, what does good look like, and how can we measure whether we're achieving, what we're setting out to achieve? And I guess one of the things that I noticed pretty early on as I started investigating this space, there's a lot of groups working out there. Examples in the education space, there are not-for-profits who are whizzing around, running into schools. It seems to be relatively ad hoc, giving a talk, coming away, saying, look, we're really making a difference. I'm really logical in my thinking, and I'm looking at the data and I'm going, well, if you guys are really making a difference, why are we seeing the lowest numbers ever in terms of tertiary enrolment for mining related degrees? Something is not right. And so we have to hold, and including myself, we have to hold people to account. If they're going to actually do a piece of work, we've got to see those results. Otherwise we're all wasting time and money. So that's really important. I think it's worth setting some context in terms of why embark on these initiatives right now. And there's a number of really pressing reasons. Firstly, we have an ageing technical workforce. So within 10 years, people like myself who have got a lot of years of experience, and we're really talking 25 plus years, they're going to be partially or fully retired. We've already lost some really great people from the industry, people who've got lots and lots of learnings. Some of those learnings have been lost with those people. When we look at the next group down, the 15 to 25 years of experience, they're actually in pretty short supply. Susie mentioned it before, taxi drivers. With the cyclicity of the industry, we've lost people. And I think over and above taxi drivers and Uber, the other area that I think we've lost a lot of people into is technology. So people have gone in, technology's been really on the upswing. People have started doing other things, got interested in that. They've never come back to the industry. So that then leaves to 15 years and less experienced people. I'm very visual, so I'm thinking, okay, if I'm holding the relay baton and I'm wanting to hand over that relay baton to people within the industry who are going to not just keep this industry ticking along, but actually bring it up to the next notch, where are those people? We've actually got to create those industry professionals so that they're comfortable taking the baton and running with it. In reality, we probably should have started this focus, and I did actually say this to our CEO and head of HR recently, we probably should have started this 10 years ago. So we've got some catch up to do. Secondly, the nature of our work is changing. Future resources in terms of what we'll discover and what we'll mine, they're going to be a lot more challenging than the industry has experienced so far. We know that the ore bodies that we're going to be mining and finding will be much more complex. They're going to be generally of lower quality. They're generally going to be a lot deeper below the surface of the earth. They're going to be in potentially more challenging locations. On top of that, we've got social licence to operate requirements. We've got both resource and environmental stewardship requirements. And that's going to necessitate enhanced technical capability, not just for the traditional disciplines that we're used to, but also for others with different focus to really get on top of the licence to operate, the environmental and the resource stewardship piece. Those people are going to need to be able to communicate very strongly, and they're going to have great critical thinking skills. So, you know, there's a bit of a picture of your ideal resources professional of the future. The other piece, because I'm on the JORC committee, I'm very aware of this, regulators are starting to push very hard for accreditation of professionals engaged in resources and reserves estimation for public reporting. That's not going to go away. It's ramping. Don't know how long until it's a must-have, but we're heading into that. I guess the other thing is the way we work is being enhanced as we start applying disruptive technologies. So the composition of our teams, diversity, much better than it used to be. The locations that people work, quite different. We used to all be on mine sites, now we're quite spread. The skills that we need and the way those skills work together, they're fundamentally changing. When we talk about a fully integrated and a highly automated operation, that's going to change the way that we collect data. Absolutely agree with Adam. We have to be out there in the field. We're in the discovery and the resource characterisation phase. But once we get to an operating mine, we're going to very, very shortly, it's going to be nearly impossible to get into that mine to actually collect the data. We're going to be relying on sensors to do what we would normally have done physically ourselves. So there's a whole different way of working. So that, you know, we collect the data using sensors, we collate it, we interpret it, and then we make near real-time decisions in terms of how we get most out of that resource. And certainly from a BHP perspective, the enhanced technical capability, if we get this right, we could add millions, if not billions of value every year to what BHP does. If we actually get the capability to support our resources right, everyone knows that if you can get better at identifying and understanding your resources, that's a key value driver for any resource company. But as I said before, against the very exciting background of what the opportunities are for us for the future, the next generation, they're not choosing careers in the resource industry in general. We're seeing the lowest global tertiary enrolments for geoscience and resource engineering degrees ever. And that's across most of the world. There are exceptions, so I'm aware in Chile, Peru, South Africa, they're not seeing a great drop in numbers, but pretty much everywhere else, numbers are just plummeting. And that's had a flow-on effect. We've seen the demise of some degrees. Other degrees, as I speak, other degrees are being put under the ruler. If a degree is not actually breaking even, we've got key universities in Australia that are actually thinking about whether they cut those degrees out of what they offer. If we don't get on top of that, that is actually going to have a massive impact on our industry. So, and even those people that do enrol in a tertiary degree, often the curriculum and the delivery methods aren't necessarily aligned with both the societal but also the industry transformational imperatives. So I guess there's some key reasons that are really driving me in this space. So with that, I'll walk you through some of the initiatives that I'm working on in each of those three key areas that I talked about before. And let's start with the industry professionals. So I'm delivering tools and programs to enable BHP technical professionals to upskill and to improve their capability. But there is absolutely a broader imperative to lift technical capability across the resources industry. If we're all honest, we all employ each other's people. It all goes around. So let's lift everyone so that we actually collectively reap the benefits of that. It's a shared accountability, but it's also a really exciting opportunity to collaborate. And it's one that probably even 10 years ago, I wouldn't have necessarily believed that we could do it, but it's starting to happen. So where do we start? Well, certainly with respect to BHP, what we've done, when I say we, it's myself, it's a consulting group that assisted us, but really importantly, it's been the workforce who built a global technical competency framework. That's the starting point in terms of it clearly describes the roles across both geoscience and resource engineering. It describes the competencies that are required to perform each one of those roles, right through from graduate level to the technical specialists and the leaders. That's our roadmap. And without that, it's going to be ad hoc. So that was a really important starting point. From that, we can map current state. We can actually identify where knowledge gaps are across the workforce, and that helps us to inform our training requirements. We can create and publish career paths, and that allows the individual to be empowered in terms of having a look at where do I want to take my career, what support do I need. We can provide them with the support, but as I've always said, the individual is in charge of where they take their career. We can give them the tools for them to decide what they want to do with their career, where they want to go, and we can give them the support, but they need to step up and do that. We can build really robust workforce plans, and I think it's important. Often when you're building a workforce plan, you talk about the number of full-time equivalents that you need across certain areas. But with this, it's not just about FTEs. It's actually about the competencies that you need to continuously improve and grow the company. And we can also, and this is very exciting, and I'll talk a bit more about this shortly, we can fast-track the development of specialists with deep technical expertise in critical roles. And we've got a concept called masterclasses, and I'll talk about masterclasses shortly. We can choose virtual teams with the right skills for special projects and assurance. If we can map and we know who's got skills in the right areas, we can pull them together. Technology allows us to do that. And equally, we can inform the tertiary institutions about what the foundational competencies are that we expect our graduates to have when they join our workforce. If we're sharing that information, the universities can make sure that the curricula that they provide is actually hitting the mark. So again, it comes back to we can provide the measure. They need to actually ensure that they teach according to that. I've mentioned that we've been mapping the training requirements to assess knowledge gaps. Fine, but where do you actually find this theoretical training to support and lead into experiential learning? Now, in the past, we had groups like the Australian Mineral Foundation, we had the Australian Drilling Institute Training Centre, etc. that ran courses regularly, and you could send somebody along to those. But the world's changed. They don't exist anymore. And provision of training is very ad hoc. It's ad hoc in terms of content, in terms of method, location, timing of delivery, cost, and also the quality control around that. And our workforces of today, they're lean. Many of our technical personnel work in remote locations, and they're generally FIFO. So it can be really difficult and very costly to get them to classroom-based training. And learning methods are changing. Concentration spans are getting shorter due to the pace of life, and let's face it, the distraction of smartphones. So we decided that our internal training programs would actually accept the current state situation, and we'd use available technology to produce informative TED Talk style advanced learning. And if there were off-the-shelf programs, then certainly we purchase them or we subscribe to them, and we commission others, and indeed we use our own internal experts to create programs where it made sense to do so. So I mentioned that my journey actually started a couple of years ago with my team at the time, which was the Geoscience Centre of Excellence. We produced a number of e-learning modules. We also engaged a university professor to produce some mineral economics modules for us. That was a key gap. That was a clear one right at the beginning, that a lot of mining industry or resources industry personnel actually don't understand the business side of the industry and the business case behind what they do. And it's really important for people to have that knowledge. After 2 years, we've now got an internal library of about 54, I think, modules. They're going up all the time as we create more. Each of those modules, as I said, TED Talk style, something between 15 and 30 minutes in duration. They're in both English and Spanish. And they cover topics, in addition to the mineral economics, we've got advanced structural geology, advanced geochemistry, sampling and QA/QC, mineral systems, advanced geostats, seismic geophysics, and as I said, additional modules in progress. So our personnel can choose a module and they can build their knowledge whenever they've got a few spare minutes. The feedback from that has been excellent. In the first instance, we haven't created any assessment for those modules. It's more about getting the information out there in a method that actually allows them to learn and then to go and apply it in the workforce. So that's the geoscience area. In the resource engineering space, we've got some catch up to do. And the way we're doing that is ourselves and peer companies, we're in discussions with an industry training service provider to develop some similar advanced e-learning programs. Now, the exciting part of this initiative is that we actually do get to collaborate with industry peer companies to develop this package. And building technical capabilities in some areas is an industry imperative and one that we should be addressing together. And I'm hopeful that for some of the learning modules mentioned here, we can actually make these available to the broader industry and indeed to tertiary students to help build their knowledge. So it's a case of watch this space, but that work will kick off before too long. And we're hopeful that a number of companies will actually come on board to help support the development of those modules, and then we can actually get them out into the broader community. So as we're seeing in this meeting, and indeed in our schools at the moment, COVID-19 is driving society to fast-track the use of technology to advance learning. We're probably slightly ahead in this space. Of course, nobody knew COVID-19 was going to happen, but that's not to say that we would completely replace the classroom or the workshop style of learning. Face-to-face learning definitely will continue, but it will complement and it will enhance e-learning where it's appropriate. So I'll talk now a little bit about the masterclasses. The masterclass program is a BHP internal program, and I guess what we're hoping is that will distinguish us through development of our next generation of specialists, and it's really focused on key technical roles where we currently have a critical industry shortage. And I'm talking about the sort of roles that if you want to get a really good person in this space for a particular role, it can take you a year of looking before you can actually identify and then recruit that person if they're prepared to come on board. I'm really excited about this because I think it offers a career-changing opportunity that we can provide to our younger professionals who've got aptitude and passion in these critical specialist areas. And so just to give a feel for what those areas are, the first areas that we'll focus on will be structural geology, geotechnical engineering, geometallurgy with a mineralogy overprint, geostatistics, and we're actually debating with the last one whether it's hydrogeology or tailings engineering. So they're the first cabs off the rank. There will be others following, but for us, they're our most critical areas at the moment where it is really tough to go and get really good people. So the masterclass program will run over a 2-year period. Each one will be managed by a global specialist. Some of those will be internal BHP people. In some cases, we'll reach out to others. And for each cohort, we'll be selecting about 10 to 12 people, as I said, early to mid-career professionals. They'll be chosen based upon some agreed criteria, so it's very, very above the line. We're not just going to reach out and touch people on the shoulder. People will be assessed in terms of their applications to participate in the program. They're going to be developing deep technical expertise and leadership. And how we're going to do that is, obviously, we will be providing the advanced learning opportunities, and there'll be e-learning as well as workshops, etc. Each time we do a piece of learning, we get the group together, and they'll be getting together on a 6-monthly basis, and they'll be undertaking collaborative field work on a real problem. That's a material problem in each case where we can find one. And they'll actually be adding value, but they'll also be getting the opportunity collaboratively to test out the theory that they've learnt in a practical sense with the experts guiding them. Additional to that, they'll be undertaking their own research project for their own asset that they're assigned to. We'll be providing them secondment opportunities so they get a lot more varied exposure in their area of expertise. And as I said, advanced learning opportunities. Where we can possibly do it, we're also going to take the opportunity to engage the field work jointly with other masterclass cohorts. So really kind of break down the barriers or the silos that the industry tends to have developed over time. Again, I always talk about the good old days on remote sites. I was a telfer actually just before Susie. And, you know, we all mucked in together. We all knew right across the value chain who did what you needed to provide to them, what they needed to provide to you. A lot of that's been lost in today's industry. So just trying to get some of that back. So ideally, when we're running the structural geology field programs for the master classes, we'll have those geotechnical engineers working with them so that the two groups which have to work together understand what information each other needs and how it comes together to really provide that list that we need. In accordance with our diversity targets, which we are really dedicated to achieving, masterclass cohorts will be 50% male, 50% female. That's not negotiable. So that's the masterclass program, very exciting. In the tertiary education space, I've mostly talked about that already. I guess a few other things is that we're working with the Minerals Council of Australia and other industry groups and peer companies to influence and support curriculum development, content delivery, and the experiential learning. So, you know, there's a lot that we can do in that space for industry to work much more closely with the tertiary educators to make sure they're on target, they understand what we need, and then we provide them with the support that we can, which probably means more guest lectures, etc. as well, from industry into the tertiary area. Getting more interns into the field, we're actually starting to look at, it's interesting, a lot of universities report that if you can get students in as interns for vacation work, at the end of first year, that has a massive impact on their choices then as they go forward in university. And what they find is a lot of people are, as they go through and they end up, you know, at a mine site, that's it, they're sold. they're on a trajectory to the industry. If they don't have that exposure, they don't know what they don't know. So it's, yeah, again, the entire industry needs to step up and really try and help in that space. But the last bit is the primary and secondary piece, I guess. And what we really want to do is, again, similar story. Those primary and secondary students, with the exception of the work that Susie and some of her peers are doing, they just don't know what the mining industry is all about. And in fact, worse than that, with social media, etc., they're probably hearing unfounded negatives about the resources industry. So what we really want to be able to do is expose kids in not an overt way, it's a covert way. It's basically giving them exposure to the resources industry without selling ourselves. The industry should be able to sell itself in terms of the applications of STEM learning, etc., to our industry. So I started working with Susie around scoping some interactive, inquiry-based and accessible, that's important, career guiding games, working in the gamification space. And that also needs to be aligned with the school curricula. And we're also going to align with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. The games will incorporate things like, it'll actually incorporate Indigenous science, so we've got people that we can work on in that space. As Susie talked about before, maths and the interdisciplinary sciences like physics, chemistry, geology, biology. They'll have to include problem solving, application of enterprising skills, and kids will love it if the games are fun and they can be competitive against each other, potentially against other schools. They're learning and they're actually working out for themselves how to apply what they've learned in a mining industry setting for whatever the concept is for that particular game. So they're getting the exposure without even realising that they are, but they're having fun while they're doing it. And what we're proposing is we'll do a trial sprint, focusing on producing a separate game each for years 6 and 8. And again, I'm going to be leaning on Susie to work with her education department connections to make sure that we get from the top down, that we get approval to slot these in as a teaching tool within the curriculum. And we'll look at what the uptake is, what the responses are, learnings for each of those 2-year groups. We can then refine and work through other year groups to produce more of the same thing. We're looking at sponsorship support from industry bodies, and in fact I've got a meeting with the Minerals Council of Australia at the end of this month to be putting this proposal, they already know it's coming, but putting this proposal to them, and also again leaning on companies to help out with support in this space. But again, if we can actually influence those younger kids, that then our tertiary enrolments go up. If we get the tertiary aligned with what we need in the industry, the whole thing flows. It is really a pipeline. So they're the big things that I'm focusing on, and yeah, happy to take any questions on that.
Thank you so much. That sounds like you've got a very busy time ahead of you. I've had some really nice comments coming through. Katrina Reed says, glad to hear that you're focusing on linking structural geology and geotech. This is the area that she used to work in at Golder, so it sounds amazing. And
Great.
I have a question that's come through as well. So you mentioned that you have success measures for your initiative. So what are these, both for industry professionals and education?
Right, so for industry professionals, we'd be looking at, because we've got that competency framework, what we'd be wanting to do is to see whether for our workforce, whether the competencies meet or exceed the workforce requirements. If we're getting it right, then whatever our workforce plan says in terms of competencies, we should be meeting that. So we can measure that quite well. We'd also be seeing that we increase the retention of our specialist technical skills within the workforce. So the masterclasses should actually contribute to that. If we're getting it right, we won't have to actually go, like we're very happy for people who are passionate and have an aptitude in a particular area to knock on BHP's door to say, I would love to, I'd love to be involved in a masterclass. But I think if we get that right, once we've developed the next generation of these deep technical experts, we won't have to spend that 12 months looking for unicorns really in some areas, and that would be really great. We do internal satisfaction surveys, so and we can actually drill that data down to, by profession. So what we would be wanting to see is that the professionals in terms of those surveys are getting better employee satisfaction because they're able to actually empower themselves with respect to their knowledge and their careers. Ideally, because leading on the masterclasses again, we're hoping that will set us apart as an employer of choice, so that anybody who's really passionate in the technical specialist space will go, all right, if I go to BHP, I can really, really take off with my career in whatever the area is of expertise that they're interested in. As an industry, though, we would be wanting to see improved efficiency and reputation for the broader sharing across the industry. If we all lift, we'll all do a better job. So, we should be able to measure that. In the education space, it would be really great to see with the primary and secondary schools that kids actually are going through and getting a better understanding of what the resources industry is all about. Again, that should flow through. As we said, we can measure tertiary student enrolments, and we'd be wanting to see that, they're going up. We can also measure greater collaboration between industry and tertiary institutions. It's not really great at the moment. We can definitely improve. And things like universities actually have advisory boards, and even just looking at company attendance on university advisory boards, there's been some unis who've gone, look, we've given up because nobody's turned up. We've actually got to step up as an industry and really help the unis to help themselves. And I guess the other one is that ultimately we can see more diversity in the graduates that are coming through, and again with the competencies that align with what our industry requirements are. If we get this right back at the beginning of the pipeline with the school kids, we'll have as many females as males coming through in all areas. Whether it's not just geoscience, it'll be right across the engineering field if we can get it right.
That's amazing. Someone else has just commented something. Anonymous, mysterious. I've seen many young people have their futures invested in. However, some have negative experiences in the workplace, i.e., especially young women experiencing sexual harassment, which deters them from the industry and causes them to totally retrain. Are BHP also stepping up their diversity and inclusivity measures to ensure the training and investment they are putting in their staff isn't going to waste?
It's a really good question. Actually, I'm wondering whether it's a BHP person who's asked that, because with our grad program particularly, that's getting a complete revamp. But again, I guess with respect to inclusion and diversity, BHP is really serious in that space, and so anything that was not acceptable is called out, or should be called out immediately, and it will be acted on very swiftly. So look, people shouldn't be worried. I guess I've been really lucky in my career, and I'm assuming, Susie, you were as well. Telfer was, early 80s. Susie's shaking her head. Early 80s. We really were in the red dog era, but honestly, people were surprised, because I was a female and I was a geologist, but I never had a negative experience, and so I know that I'm very, very lucky compared to some women in the industry. But that we're also talking 35 years ago, so the world has moved on. It's not to say that there are not issues, but people have to be calling them out. And there's those of us who've been around for a long time who can really stomp on any behaviours that are not acceptable very quickly. And there's procedures in place to do that.
Yeah, it's a really important question, isn't it? Thank you, whoever spoke up just then. So I think that's it